Welcome to the Having It All podcast, the show about what it takes to live an abundant, loving life. My name is Matthew Bivens, and each week I'm helping you get out of your head so that you can truly have it all. Let's do it. What's going on, everybody? I appreciate you joining me today on the Having It All podcast. If it sounds a little bit different today, don't worry. It's because I'm recording from my car. Every once in a while, I just feel inspired to pick up my recorder, which I bring around with me to a lot of places, because you never know when something's just going to hit you, and just pick it up and record. And so right now, I'm driving to a fitness class, and I said, you know what? Something is wanting to come through me right now, so I'm gonna pick up the mic. Today, I want to talk about being on path and being in alignment, and what that feels and looks like. I had a really fantastic example earlier in the day today about being on path and being in alignment. And, you know, it is such a beautiful thing when these sort of examples pop into your life, because they're so freaking crystal clear. And it's so clear that you can't do anything except just chuckle at what went down. So I'm going to share that story, and then I'm going to share a couple of other little tidbits about being on path, being on alignment, and what it feels like what it truly feels like and what it looks like. So first, the story. The short version is that a client let me go today. This is a client who hired me to do some technical work for him. I came on board, and he already had a team in place, a few other people, and he called me up this afternoon after a few hours after a team meeting that we had, and he basically said, "Hey Matthew, I've been struggling to sort of organize and manage all of these people. We're going to consolidate a couple of roles, and I no longer am in need of your services." And so, that happens. It's I'm a service provider, and that stuff sort of happens, and it's cool, right? It's part of the game. But what I thought was fascinating is what happened next. And two things kind of flew into my mind when my client told me this. The first has to do with events that took place just a couple hours earlier. So I mentioned that I had a call with this client and the team earlier in the day. After that call wrapped up, I walk into the kitchen, and Sarah is there with the baby, and she's like, "Hey, how was your call?" And I said to her, I wonder how much longer I'm going to be with this client. I said, it's emotionally and energetically draining. And that has kind of been the pattern for the past couple of months, that I just feel sort of wiped after these calls. And it's not even as if I'm doing a lot of work for this client. I'm honestly doing very, very little. But I feel drained. I feel drained emotionally, and I feel drained energetically. And so I'm talking to Sarah, and I'm like, babe, with me, this, that when I start feeling that, if something doesn't shift, then I'm going to make a shift, and I'm going to, remove myself, just because I'm sort of an energy snob. And if you're sucking my energy away, cool, peace. Like that's kind of how I handle things. So I told that to her. I said, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be working with this client. And then shit you not, like 2 hours later, the client calls me up to tell me, "Hey Matthew, we're going to be consolidating, and I'm no longer in need of your services." I'm like, wow, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. And I'm going to tie all this into being in alignment and being on path in a second. So, that happens, that goes down. And the second thing, like when my client tells me that he's going to let me go, I didn't feel anything. There was, in the past, if something had gone off with a client or a project, like, my heart rate might pick up, or I might feel nervous and anxious and all of that stuff. I felt none of that. It was as if he told me, "Hey, it's raining at my house." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I got it. You might want to bring an umbrella." He tells me that he's going to move in a different direction. I'm like, "Hey, cool. No worries, man. I'll send you my invoice. I'd love to get a testimonial for the website. And if you have any, referrals to send my way, give him my number." Like, that was just how smooth the conversation went. And those couple of things upon some reflection, really spoke to me and said, you know what, Matthew, you were not on path. You were not on path when you were in this engagement. And it's because of a couple of things. When I know I'm on path, a few things happen. First, I'm excited, right? Like, I get excited in my body. Like, it's Christmas Day and I'm about to open a present. Like, there's a level of excitement that happens in my body when I know that I'm on path, because I know some amazing shit's about to go down. I'm about to flex my creative muscles and we're about to make some magic. That's how I feel when I'm excited about something. That's how I feel when I'm on path. I didn't feel that with this client. I think if I'm owning it and just speaking my truth, I was in it for the paycheck, right? So I didn't feel that excitement. And when I'm on path with things, it becomes effortless. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't work that needs to be put in, or time and energy and all of that. But the work that does go into the projects that I know I'm on path with, it is effortless work. And if you've experienced it in your life, you know what I mean. Maybe at one point in your life you felt called to write a book. And you're just like, I gotta write this book. And you might spend hours a day writing this book. You might seclude yourself in a cabin in the woods and sit down and write for 12 hours a day. Or you might have been writing this thing for years. It's a lot of work, but it feels effortless. Because it's just coming from your spirit, it's coming from your soul, it's coming from your heart. The work with this client didn't feel effortless. So I'm not excited about it. It's not effortless. And then, of course, that becomes an energetic drain, right? Of course, I don't end up looking forward to the calls. And, the universe is sending me all of these signals for these past 2 months, but I've basically been ignoring them because, hey, I'm in this to it's easy money for me. I'm trying to get the paycheck and I don't have to do much. But man, what ends up happening when you're not on path, you get that energetic drain, you get that emotional drain. And then you get to weigh whether or not that's worth the money. So for me, the universe is giving me all these arrows telling me that I'm not on path. And as soon as I put something out into the universe that, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be working with this client, boom, I get a response. The universe was like, 2 more hours. That's how long you're going to be working with this client. And I'm humbled at these types of situations. It's like you think you know something, you think you understand something, you think you've got it. You think you've mastered something. And then you're presented with a situation where you're like, okay, I see what I missed. Thank you for the lesson. It's like having the Kung Fu master and you walk in and you're all cocky and stuff, and then, he disables you with a pinky and you're like, oh, I have a lot to learn. Got it. Thank you for the lesson. That's how I felt. And what's cool is that in retrospect, I can see the arrows and the messages about being on path and being in alignment as these little lighthouses that I was missing. And so that's the second half of this. The first half of this conversation is just my story and those examples. But the second half is I wanted to share with you the 2 lighthouses that I was ignoring, and they were there. So the first is this YouTube video that I was watching, and it's from a I guess you can call him an individual called Abraham Hicks. And this is like some pretty high level personal development sort of, this is very metaphysical, this is very much law of attraction, that type of content, which, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of. I don't love it because I kind of like things to be very grounded for me, but I've just really enjoyed the messages of Abraham Hicks, and I'm going to put a link to the actual video that really spoke to me in the show notes for this episode over on Fireside Network, so you can check it out for yourself. In this video by Abraham Hicks, the topic is really about not working hard. And by not working hard, you can get to where you want to go faster. And it's a 15-minute video, and there's a lot of stuff in there, but a few of the big takeaways I got were that when you are working in alignment, things work for you. Like when you are in alignment, when you are, she talks about the energetic vibration. Like when you're on that high vibrating path, your high vibrating path, or when you're on path, let's just break it down like that. When you are on path, things start working for you. You start to feel excited. You start to enjoy it, and things start to move. And my example, what I just shared is a great example of that. And Abraham Hicks also talks about how you can make things happen when you're not on path. And we've all experienced that too. You might be working on a project you don't love, or in a job you don't love, or whatever it is, but like, you can get shit done when you have to. And to me, that makes me think of the difference between power and the difference between force. When you're forcing something in life, there's an ingredient that has to be there in order for it to be force, and that's resistance. Right? You've got that strength, but then you've got that resistance. You combine the two and you can see the force of something. There's got to be resistance there. So that resistance is simply you not being on path, or being on potentially not the most powerful path for you. But you can still get stuff done. You can still force things and get them done. We've all done it. Sometimes you need to, right? Like sometimes you just gotta force stuff to get it done. But if you stay in that forceful state for a long period of time, like if that is your natural state to force things, it's not personal. It's just inevitable. It's part of the principle. You will get worn down, because one ingredient that's necessary for force is resistance. It is friction. Now, the other side of that coin is power. Power is that same strength, it's that same motivation, but it's combined with flow. When things are just flowing, right? When you're on path, that's when things truly become powerful and things begin to move in your life. So, I've been listening to that exact Abraham Hicks video. That one, I've listened to it about 4 times. And, one of my morning rituals that I like to do is I wake up when Maya gets up, and we play for a minute, and then we jump in the car and go for a drive. I really like driving around my part of town when it's still kind of cool in the morning and misty and no one else is on the road, and I'll typically put something empowering on and just listen to it through the speakers. And so I've done it with this Abraham Hicks video, and so I've heard this message, and that's my point, right? There's this lighthouse, this beacon. It's been flashing this message in my face. I've been intentionally listening to it. Maybe that's the distinction. I've listened to it, but I haven't heard it until now. Right? I've listened to her talk about being on path, it being fun, it being exciting. I've listened to that a number of times, but now I'm hearing it because I've experienced it. So my second little example, my second little lighthouse is something I saw on Instagram today from one of the few accounts that I follow, and that's Gary Vaynerchuk. I really dig Gary Vaynerchuk. I probably mentioned him on the podcast once or twice before. He just has this really raw style to him, and I really appreciate the rawness. And he talks about, I think he might even use the word on path. And he, in this little quick video, it's like 15 seconds long, the message is simply, how you know you're on path is when things start to happen. And that popped across my feed today. It's like, damn, the universe is throwing out these beacons, right? Throwing out these little arrows saying, hey Matthew, things start to happen. That's how you know you're on path. So I think I can link to Instagram stuff. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll link to that as well in the show notes for this episode over at firesidenetwork.com. So you can check out the Abraham Hicks video and the Gary Vaynerchuk Instagram post. And, with all this stuff, these examples, these lighthouse beacons, these arrows, I share it all because maybe, right? Maybe you could get it a little bit sooner than I did. Like maybe this is a sort of call for you to just take a minute, take a step back, A lot of times this is best done in a place of quiet, in a place of peace. And just think about where in your life things are feeling hard. Where in your life you're feeling a sense of anxiety. You know, where are things challenging? Where do you have to put in force? Where are things tiring? Where do you feel exhausted? And then not in a great way. Like, there's a type of exhausted, like, people in the Super Bowl, football players in the Super Bowl, like the Falcons. Oh man, my Falcons. But it's like the Falcons in the Super Bowl, at the end of that game, they felt exhausted, but it's like a good type of exhausted. I'm talking about the exhausted where you're just drained. Like, life just beat you up that day, and you really got nothing left. And, that's when you turn towards your little vices, the ice cream and the wine and all that stuff, the food. I'm talking about, like, taking a look at those instances where you're feeling tired, you're feeling worn out, you're feeling like things are hard, you're feeling challenged to create a sense of joy and excitement about what you're working on. Maybe maybe it's your work, or maybe it's a project you've got going on. Maybe it's a relationship. Whatever it is, this might be your opportunity to take a second to just think about that and to say, maybe it's hard because I'm not on path. Right? Maybe this is tiring because I'm trying to force it. And boy, if I even put just plant a seed of I'm wondering when this is going to change, or I'm open to making a change, or I want to make a change. Just planting those seeds and seeing how the universe unfolds for you. Because I believe you put stuff out there. I talk about this on my Law of Attraction episode. You put stuff out there and things start to happen. And so with me, I put that little blip out there. Hey, I wonder how much longer I'm going to be working with this client. And I choose to believe that whether it was on his terms, when to terminate things, or my terms, the clock had started. The countdown clock had started the moment that I planted that seed when I spoke with Sarah. The moment that I said those words, I planted a seed, and the countdown clock had started. So, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, then I want you to just own the fact that there are no coincidences, and that this message was meant for you right now. And if this isn't your first time, and you just jumped in and you opened up your phone and you press play, like, you were meant to hear this message. I don't know the reason. You may not know the reason, but you were meant to hear it. So take this as an opportunity to just sit on that message for a minute. Where do you feel like things are challenging? Where do you feel like you have to put in unnecessary force or effort? Where are things feeling very effortful? Where are things just not happening? Going back to that Gary Vaynerchuk, lighthouse moment. Like, things aren't happening. You're trying, you're putting in effort, you're putting in energy, you're putting in time, putting in money, putting in resources, but just things aren't happening. Take a minute to investigate those instances in your life, and then ask yourself, are they a result of me being off path? Or being on, a path that I'm not loving? And then from there, you can decide what you want to do next. I'm very interested to hear your feedback on this episode. I appreciate the emails from the previous episode. You guys are awesome. I love your feedback. I love your questions. If you have feedback you want to share with me, thoughts you want to share with me, a situation you want to share with me, questions, email me. My email is mattcbivens@gmail.com. I answer every single email. You can also visit my website, matthewbivens.com, and go to the contact form and just fill that out, and it'll put your note right at the top of my inbox. And I am just truly grateful to you. I'm grateful to and humbled by the universe, and grateful to all those lessons. And I just love the fact that you are open to receiving the insight through my life experiences and the things that the universe teaches me. And equally, I get powerful lessons from you all as well, and that's definitely has happened in the stories that you all have shared. So just continue sharing them. You've got my email address and my contact. And lastly, I'll say that if this podcast has spoken to you in any way, if you've gotten any sort of value from it, I would so appreciate you to share what the podcast has done over on iTunes. Just by writing a review, leaving your thoughts, and just sharing with me how the podcast or episode has touched you. That would be awesome for me to read, and it also helps new people find this show and connect to the messages. So you can just go to iTunes, search for Having It All Podcast, and click the review tab and get that done. And finally, just want to say thank you again for listening. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. My name is Matthew Bivens, and here is to you having it all.